Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in a Half Shell, Turtle Power. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Movies and TVs on the Ball. I'm Steve, your host, and with me as always is
Jay.
and we are doing this is going to be called Pilot Season, or Come Fly With Me, as I like to call it, where I will talk about where we kind of go through the pilot episode of TV series. And since Jay and I talked about
Toys that made
Toys That
us.
Made Us, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, we kind of figure this could be a nice follow up for Teenage Mutant for us, where we're gonna look at the animated pilot, which is a two-parter on the origin of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that was released in 1987. So Jay, did you watch this growing up on
Uh,
TV, or did you kind of catch this during reruns?
Surprisingly, I guess I did not watch this like regularly growing up. I always enjoyed seeing it, but never watched it in
Never watched it
series.
in
I know. I
series.
think you watched it
I
pretty
think I
often.
watched it pretty often, and I think, well, I mean, I think it's also because we're like what 2 years apart, so
Right.
there's a slight sort of me being in the world for 2 years, two extra
Right.
years, 2 early years. I've kind of noticed it, but what I looked at it when we watched it is, I guess I didn't. I think this is more of a pilot. This is a two or three parter
Right.
pilot episode, and um, you had, this really shows us the characters in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. We've got, like, I mean, they kind of spell it out
Yeah,
for
they
us in the
really pretty
theme song.
direct. And then they have like
The
their belts have like the little like
the
monograms of their names.
names on them,
Right.
yeah, and like the red one was Raphael and Michelangelo. Teenage was true. Michelangelo is a tardy dude,
Right.
and but I kind of noticed that Raphael and Michelangelo, at least in this pilot, was very different,
Uh-huh.
or they kind of look the same. They're in their personality. Don't you did you kind of see sort of a, maybe not the same personality, but Raph in the movie is a lot more
Angry.
angrier,
Right.
and this one he's a little bit more
Everyone's
fun
more,
loving,
yeah,
and I think it's
cheery. Yeah.
cheery, but it's a kids show. I don't really think,
Right.
I think now they would really kind of dive into more of the um they would dive into more of the characteristics that we've kind of known knowing the
Right.
turtles. But we pretty much, if you've watched we pretty much get sort of, I guess we'll go into it. April O'Neil. Oh, by the way, I wanted to let you know that the voice of Brain, no, Pinky,
Uh-huh.
is the voice of Raphael.
Okay.
Because I talked to him at Fanboy a couple years ago,
Gotcha.
and I was like, "You sound like Raphael," and he's like, "I am the voice of Raphael."
Uh,
So there's kind of a connection there. So the pilot pretty much opens in the same way, kind of in the same way, a little bit like the um the
there's like
movie
right, there's like the crime wave.
Crime Wave, but it's there. It's more of like, it's not as
It's not subtle.
it's not as subtle. It's
They're like
very
they have like the doctor like these are crimes committed by ninjas.
ninjas, yes, and he's like, it's the ninjas that are causing it. And what I've noticed is with this one is that like, you don't really see it's not like the Foot Clan like in the movie. It's more of just a bunch of punk thugs kind of
Right.
thing. So they're uh, you know, heisting stuff and doing stuff like that.
Stealing scientific equipment.
Yeah, then they're stealing scientific equipment from TCRI, I think,
Yeah, just some different laboratories and stuff.
laboratories around.
Yeah.
And that's interesting because I think in the in the comics, April O'Neil used to be a lab assistant in,
Okay,
or like in the original '80s comics, like
gotcha,
before the show started. So I think that's kind of a tag to them.
gotcha.
Um, what was your thought of? So I guess we'll go through the plot and then we'll kind of
Okay.
what. So we see basically they're doing a bunch of like heists and stuff, which is kind of and we see um April kind of does her report
Um,
and she gets out and as she's walking out she sees two thugs. Or is it two thugs or three?
yeah, like some thugs show up and they sort of all her news crew runs away and then sort of they chase her into the sewers.
Sewers, right?
Right.
And it's more of the and I always kind of felt like I always thought that they would be a lot more. Her newscasters aren't really that.
No,
You know,
they
they're
all like
like
run away. Like I
they're
got a dentist
I've
appointment.
got a dentist appointment. Well, they don't really like they run away, but you can kind of tell that she's kind of on her own.
Right.
So she gets cornered into a wall, and then we see I guess Donatello's bow and arrow or bow not bow
Bow
and
stuff.
arrow bow staff
Right.
show up, and they hit the thug, and then they start
Duking it out.
duking
Yeah.
it out, and I kind of like that. You know, what was your thoughts on that kind of the introduction? Kind of reminded me a little bit of the movie, a little bit, but not as
Right.
um, colorful. You know, but this one's more colorful.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
No, I thought it was decent. Yeah.
um, yeah, and so they're fighting them off, and April kind of goes like, "What are you guys? Thank you guys for your help." And then she's like, "Wait a minute, you look like freaks. You look like
You're not
turtles.
human.
You're not
And
human."
then
And then
she
she
faints.
faints.
Right.
And then they take her to
Their
the
lair.
lair, which is kind of in the same way with what the movie did.
Right.
And
And she meets Splinter.
and she meets Splinter, and Splinter says, "Would you like some tea?" And she's like, "Who are you?" And then we get the personalities of each of the turtles,
Right.
and
Splinter goes into the whole backstory of how he used to, and I guess in this adaptation he is, oh, I forget his name, but like instead of being the rat of the
and
ninja, like the ninja master, he is the ninja
he
master
is a ninja master who gets transformed
into a rat
into a
by the
rat by the goo
ooze.
ooze
Sorry, not goo,
ooze, yeah.
ooze. That's right.
And I kind of noticed that they kind of show him kind of steaming and turning into the rat, and then
Right.
it's kind of the same story with the film where it's Hirasho Oki who is Shredder.
Um,
So they have like a Shredder and his
I think in the movie Shredder kills his master.
kills his master,
Right.
and in this one
He like gets him kicked out of the ninja school.
Ninja School because it's a kid show.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and then so then
It
she's
turns him into evil ninjas.
turns into evil ninjas, and then so I mean it's pretty. So then she so then they she's after they tell her kind of the origin of how the turtles sort of are in the sewer,
Right.
and then they get sort of stuck in the ooze, which is purple in this one.
Right.
They just kind of automatically transform into turtles, and Splinter turns
Turns.
into a rat
Right.
and becomes the Splinter we all know and love. And then so the turtles
Team up with
team up with
April
April,
to go hunt down like the
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 crimes.
ninja crimes,
Right.
and so they start walking around
And they find a
in
clue for a ninja
no, they
pizzeria.
start walking around, and one of the women said,
Oh,
"Oh,
right.
there's an old lady says, monsters! What are these monsters doing here?" And he said, and then Raphael is like, "Honey, we're not, or lady, we're not monsters." Then she pulls out like a
Machine
shotgun,
gun.
machine gun,
Right.
and starts going, "All right, you guys, everyone, you're not gonna screw with me." And they run away, and they're like, and then April O'Neil's like, we need to give you guys some cover or give you a disguise. So they go into a
All night
all night
men's
men's
clothing store.
clothing store, and they pick like the trench coats that we all know of,
Right.
which they used in the '90s film. So then that's part two. So then they end up going. They get so then Michelangelo gets hungry as they're walking around in their trench coats, and
Right.
they go to an all-you-can-eat or late night pizzeria.
Right. And then they see like the whole street has like Ninja Pizza, Ninja
Ninja
Dry
Pizza,
Cleaning.
Ninja Drive Cleaning, Ninja Video Rental,
Right.
which is something that is something that I'm kind of like, oh, I miss that. I mean, not the Ninja Minute, but the video rental
Right.
stuff,
Video
but
store.
video store. Um, so then as they go into the pizzeria, and I thought the pizzeria scene was pretty cool because they saw the ninjas cutting,
Working behind the
working
counter. Yeah.
behind the counter and everything, and then and
April's like sort of gets up and she's like gonna let them eat pizza and go investigate.
yeah, she wants to solve the crime
Right.
herself, and so she goes. I guess she goes to the laboratory, right, or
Yeah, it's like
the
some security
security
building,
building.
and
Yeah,
she realizes it's being like it's what they're basing their operations, and she sees a bunch of ninjas.
and it's the Foot
Right, the
that
Foot Clan.
Foot Clan, and so April is going to go to the Foot. So she goes into the Foot Clan and kind of snoops around. She gets her scoop, and then she goes to a payphone
Right.
and calls up Turtles. I found that you are
I think she calls her newspaper article,
newspaper
or
article,
I guess her
and
TV.
then the Foot Clan grabs her,
Right.
and after the Foot Clan grabs her and carries her off to Shredder's hideout.
Right.
And Shredder and the Turtles don't really know each other that well, do
No,
they? In
no, it
this
doesn't
one,
seem so at all.
and I
No,
don't think so. They do in the movie. It's the same way.
I think yeah.
I think they're in the or at least in the first movie they don't really
Right.
know each other. So so she gets caught, and then they take her to Shredder's lair, I guess.
Right. Well, it's sort of no. Then they set a trap for the turtles.
Oh, they set a trap for the turtles where it's.
They go up onto the roof to save her, and then like all the Foot Clan
Oh,
attacks.
yeah, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So she's tied to a chair up on the roof, and she's like, "Turtles, I'm glad you're here." And then the Foot Clan shows up, and then they, get into action mode where they fight the Foot Clan, and of course, which I didn't know this until I watched this a couple times,
Uh,
the Foot Clan
our
are
robots.
robots. Thank you, Reagan, for not making sure that they don't have to hurt real people with ninja issue.
Right.
Um, and did that surprise you at all, Jay?
I guess I'd seen it from the show earlier, so
Earlier,
yeah.
but do you think it? I mean, it didn't surprise me, but it's a kind
I
of
would have been like, this is even cooler because now they blow up
yeah,
as a
they blow
kid.
up as a kid, yeah.
Right.
Um, so they fight them off, and I like their fighting
Yeah, like
skill,
you have the Foot Clan sort of like like high technology
high
weapons.
technology
Like the
weapons, and the turtles like where we see Michelangelo use his nunchucks to kind of destroy one of the Foot Clan.
right,
Uh, oh, I'm saying Wolverine. Leonardo uses his swords and he cuts a couple of the robot Foot Clan
right.
together, and then they kind of, I guess they kind of have a fight. There's not that you don't see. There's a lot of quipping
Not
from
during the fight,
not
not
during
on
the
this
fight. Not
episode.
as yeah. Um, but so they fight him off and they rescue April, and I guess that's
That's pretty much. And then they go try to go down into the building, and we hear Shredder talking about like don't let them get to the technodrome,
Technodrome.
and then they sort of like flood the building,
Flood the building, and then
and sort of
that's
they have to run away and
run away
escape.
from the escape, and then it's part two. So we'll get to part two in a second. Uh, so we just got out of part two of the pilot episode
Right.
of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I guess this one was called. I don't know what this
I
one.
can't remember what it was called.
Anyway, um,
But sort of starts up with them back in their hideout, and sort of like the
the sewer
next morning.
the
Yeah.
next morning, and they're having
Yeah, they sort of go through their
their
training.
training. And what was cool about their training was that their training. What I liked about their training was we got to kind of see, them, use their checking and
Uh,
size
throwing
and
weapons and
the
stuff.
weapons and stuff, which was really cool to see. And then so then after
They get breakfast,
they
right?
get breakfast, which is like breakfast pizza is
They
always
have
pizza,
pizza, but they had cereal on top.
cereal on top of pizza, which is really, did that look appetizing to you, Jay?
No, it did not.
No, it did not. Okay. Um, so they have breakfast pizza and get out into the sewer, get out of the sewer, and they start looking for the Technodrome.
Right.
And the Technodrome and so they look around the city.
And they go to like the foundation of the building, and it's missing. Like underneath the found building is there's not there's just a big cave.
Right, big cave, and so they go looking for, and so as they're walking through the cave, Shredder, who's in the Technodrome,
Right.
sees a picture, or see on the screen is an image of the turtles, and he's like, "Turtles, where are you going?"
Uh, and then we find out inside the Technodrome is Krang.
Krang, and Krang is he's not in his body, but
Right.
he's sort of the brains. He's the brains of the operation,
Right.
and he's in and he's like, Shredder, you will do my bidding, or
Right. And he is like, if I give you the power to beat the turtles, will you make me my body?
make me move out. So that's a little foreshadowing to what's going to happen
Right.
next. Let's get to the plot, and then we'll
Okay.
get our
And so
thoughts.
then Shredder goes out, and they sort of send some robots out to the
To
zoo.
zoo,
Right.
and he's looking for his. He's already found his human,
Right. Which is the gang
the
from the
gang
first
from the
episode.
first episode,
Right.
which is a guy that's got sort of kind of a
Purple mohawk.
purple mohawk and a these really rad sunglasses,
Right.
and he's got a nose ring, or does he have a nose ring?
I can't remember if he does in human form, but he is wearing red vest and
Red
stuff.
vest and stuff, and and then you have the other one who's wearing cargo pants, and he is wearing kind of a green shirt, and he becomes sort of, and these two are the ones
Rocksteady.
that will become Bebop and Rocksteady.
Right.
So I kind of like that was the foreshadowing in
Right.
the first episode. So um, they're
And then
um,
sort of cuts back to the
to
turtles, and so April O'Neil goes back to her job,
the
and as
job.
they're like, "Where have you been for 3 days?"
Yeah, where have you been for
Which
three
they'll
days?
mention that she was like attacked by
By
thugs.
thugs or anything. I mean, which is something that they have in the for movie.
Uh,
I mean, because a lot of this is sort of ripped from the. I mean, this has been ripped to go through the movie.
uh,
But oh, it's like, oh, I know you. Yeah, she's like, oh, in the movie, it's almost like, I wasn't Mug Charles. I was just, on my way to my car and saw some thieves and that kind of. But that's the movie. But so this one, so she was going to her job, and she's getting this, letting them know the scoop.
uh,
The turtles go to the surface,
Right.
and they walk around the streets, and they get into a um,
And they go to April's
they
work.
they go to April's work because they're like they go right through an alleyway, and the alleyway is right next to the Channel 6 News. And there's also a pizza. Of course, there's a pizza place
Right.
right next to it. And um, and so they end up going. So then we get to uh, April O'Neil is talking to her boss. Is her boss Vern, or is Vern the?
I can't remember the
I
names.
can't remember. But she's talking to her boss about Vern is the boss. Okay.
Okay.
But I guess in the movie, he's more of a friend. But she's she ends up getting fired.
No, she doesn't. She I guess sort of get demoted to like just watching like a zoo crime.
Zoo crimes, yeah.
Yeah.
So she's basically doing those fluff pieces now.
Right.
So she leaves Channel 6 News, and she runs into the turtles, who are kind of in this 90s hip hop
Disguises,
disguise, where they're wearing black leather jackets and
sunglasses.
sunglasses that are all color coded, so you know that
Yeah.
they're
In a
who
boom
they are,
box.
in a boombox. And April is embarrassed by the fact that they're wearing those clothes. And Michelangelo says, "Oh, it's nothing. Don't worry about it." And then she tells him about the story about Bebop and Rocksteady becoming mutants. Meanwhile,
Splinter gets
Splinter,
captured.
well, yeah, he goes looking for trouble. He ends up checking out the Technodrome, and the little robots that you used to destroy during the video game shows up and traps
Right.
Splinter. Um, and then um, and then they go back down to the sewer, and they find the Technodrome, and then they notice then or then they go to the Technodrome. They go check to see the Technodrome to see Shredder.
Right. Because they see that he's captured Splinter.
Yes, and and then April gives them a call, calls up the news, says I've got a story and a scoop.
Right.
And then she walks by, and then Shredder gives them a trap, sets a trap for them, where
Right.
they're in sort of like that closed door, kind of
The walls are
the walls
closing
are
in.
closing in on them. And then she they destroy the um, pin pad, and they try to hold the doors together. And then after that, the robots with the little zippers, metal
Right.
ropes, show up. They do a little bit of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fighting.
Right.
Um, and we get to see Raphael use his size and like stabs them. Then there's like a bunch of other robots that show up, and they take them on. What was your thoughts on the robots that they did? I thought they were pretty creative.
Yeah, I like the ones where they fight, not the normal ones, but they sort of like a bunch of like unique sort of designs.
Yeah,
Are
and like
interesting
I like
looking.
the ones that have like the laser, the buzzsaws
Right.
was pretty cool. And then there's a spider one
There's
as
one that just sort
well,
of goes to a
and we
big
see
stomping ground.
Michelangelo actually use his nunchucks instead of just twirling them around.
Right.
And then he beats the hell out of one of them, and I liked it, and I like the sort of I've noticed that in this one they don't use bullets at all. It's just
Lasers.
laser beams. And then they have this big like tall thing that
Spiked log.
spiked logs that just keeps following them. And then they get into kind of basically it kind of reminds me of that final like that
Right.
level in like Save Splinter. It's because Splinter is like stuck in the rafters, and it's kind of like they let Shredder led him a trap for him, and
Right.
then Shredder shows up and says, "Hello, my turtles. You will have to fight the um,
Bebop and
Bebop and
Rocksteady.
Rocksteady." And I like how the turtles still have no idea who the Shredder is,
Right.
which is kind of nice. It's not like, because if they would have done it differently, it would have been, this is the backstory of Shredder.
Right. Right.
Because they thought Shredder's been dead for years or something.
Right.
So then Shredder basically says, "You will fight my men and
Let's see how powerful you really
see how
are.
powerful you really are." And then we get sort of
Like he was
the
behind the ooze the whole time.
yeah, which is interesting because I thought when we talked about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, um, the Daredevil
Uh huh.
connection, I always thought that was a connection, but I guess in this one, it's more of he was behind the ooze, and it was the fact that he touched a rat was a lot reason why he became a rat.
Right.
So then, and that's their first meeting with the Shredder, I
Right.
think,
Yeah. In person.
in person. The Bebop and Rocksteady shows up, and they charge at him. Then Michelangelo, Donatello, Leonardo fight the
Foot
Foot
Clan.
Clan and rescue Shredder or rescue Splinter. And then I love this that they when they rescue him, they get out of the sewer and they must have turtles must have like heavy heads or something because they can
Lift a foot.
lift a manhole out of the
Right.
thing. But they rescue Splinter. Then they get to the zoo, and then all of a sudden, Bebop and Rocksteady show up
With laser guns.
with laser guns, and I like how Bebop and Rocksteady aren't that smart.
Right.
I've kind of noticed that watching a couple episodes. They're just kind of,
Right.
you
They're
know,
also sort of, the turtle's been training for years and they just became a mutant.
yeah.
So sort of a,
But they got guns, laser guns.
right.
So they shoot the laser guns. Then the turtles basically block themselves with um,
The manhole covers,
manhole covers, and then they use the manhole covers, which they did in the um,
arcade game.
arcade and in the movie. In the
Okay. I don't
Out of the Shadows movie, they use the turtle van has
remember.
like a manhole cover
Oh,
shooter
launcher.
launcher
Okay.
thing, so that's kind of a cool thing. And then they basically fight Leonardo and uses his sword to like because apparently his sword can cut through complete metal.
When you're a turtle, it can
Yeah, and so then they run into the zoo
trick him into the
and
enclosure.
trick him into the enclosure, and they get stuck in there because the thing about Bebop and Rocksteady is they're not that bright, you know,
Right.
which is kind of what you saw with Toka and Razor
Right.
as well. But then um, April O'Neil shows up and she's like, "Where's the story?" And she's like, "Well, you missed all the action, but you can record the final stuff." And then they leave, and then the Technodrome robot thing rescues them, or takes Bebop and Rocksteady back to
The Technodrome.
Technodrome, and that's pretty much the episode. So Jay, after watching these first two episodes, um, what was your thoughts? I think one, it kind of reminds me of Power Rangers, where it goes by a lot faster than I thought it was.
Right.
Because we're also not watching it without
Right.
commercials. But I did kind of like how they got the origin kind of out there. They spend enough time for you to kind of get the gist of it, but
Right.
they didn't go into like Hirasho Yoshi, the love or, the whole thing like that. But I thought it was pretty good.
Right. I guess I couldn't remember. I thought Krang shows up like way later. I didn't realize he was on episode two.
Well, I think Krang, and I guess with Krang, he's such a secondary villain. I mean, he's a main villain, but he's a
Right,
second. It's when you think of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it's always the Shredder.
right,
It's sort of the villain. It's sort of their arch nemesis kind of
right,
thing.
right,
Um, but I thought it was pretty good. I liked how it was. It did feel, I did like this like first two episodes. I liked how just the Bebop and Rocksteady came to be.
right.
I thought that was kind of cool. I
See
liked
their origin.
their origin because I think that's kind of how it's the origins done in the Out of the Shadow film. I thought April O'Neil. What do you think of her? Do you feel like she has any character? Does she, in the show, she does kind of come off as, now watching it now, she comes off as a little bit kind of insufferable.
Well, to me, it's her coworkers. Like, she goes missing for like 3 days, and like everyone leaves her when she's like getting attacked by thugs.
Yeah,
No one says they're like, "Oh, why is she late for work?"
yeah. I mean,
And
like,
then she almost gets fired for
but
like being like mugged by
yeah, yeah,
some.
yeah, yeah. It's like, but I mean, she does seem she's not insufferable, but I do feel kind of like when she's like, "Come on, guys."
It was more because she's like having to be like, because like they keep like every 2 seconds they're like, "We know we need to stop and eat pizza."
Yeah, she's like, "Come on, guys, we gotta solve a crime." I mean, I like the jumpsuit. I mean, there's so many iconic
Visually,
things.
it's like she stands out as a very like visually like stands out as a character with the
Yeah,
yellow.
and I
Yeah.
think in the I think I did. Did I mention that she was T in the comics? She was a lab assistant,
Okay, and has more relation to like the ooze
the
and stuff.
ooze and stuff. I
Okay,
think in the comics, she's like works in TCRI,
gotcha.
um,
It was really weird seeing the turtles without their
without their masks.
yeah, without their masks.
Yeah,
It
it
just
is.
looks
It
strange.
is. It is. Do you how with the nostalgia goggles on? How do you feel about this show? How do you feel about these two episodes?
Nostalgia, I like it. I have a really soft spot for Krang. He's my
Frank,
favorite.
yeah.
Yeah,
And well, see, for me, I loved it just because I felt like, it's one of those where one of those, the part one, part two, where it's just like, you gotta kind of give people sort of like, this is how the Turtles
right.
came to be. And I swear they probably had like these two, three episodes on video
Uh-huh.
as like a two-part video where like you can buy part one of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, how the turtles came to be,
Right.
kind of thing. And I liked it. I mean, it. I mean, nostalgia goggles aside, I thought it really kind of, for nostalgia goggles aside, and if I was somebody who had no idea who the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was, kind of like X Men, the Pride of the X Men,
Right.
it gives us sort of the
Basics.
basics.
Turtles.
Turtles are the good
Pizza.
guys. Pizza is what they eat. Shredder's the bad guy. Shredder
More
knows.
pizza.
Shredder knows. Splinter.
Right.
He tries to get that kind of thing. So I give it. So let's. I guess on a scale from, I guess, how do you want to rate this?
I don't know.
I wouldn't really want to rate it a scale from 1 to 10, but maybe like, for someone, if how would you what was your let's go with this. Do you feel like it was a pretty good solid two-part episode, for what it kind of it tried to explain in like an
Uh,
hour with both
Yeah, so it
episodes?
was pretty decent.
Yeah.
I think it's sort of like when you compare like some later, like it doesn't stand up as good as like the Batman animated series, but
No, no,
yeah,
but
but it's
it's
still
also, this was 87,
right.
so
It's
like,
still earlier.
so I mean, it was still trying to like kind of find its way. And I
It
also
has a lot
think,
more of a humor tone to it, which is
well,
not bad. It's
it's
just
not
different.
bad. It's just different. But I mean, like the Ninja Turtles always have
The
those
humor,
quips and
right,
humor. But I like this one. I mean, and you can kind of tell the difference between the turtles, who each one of them are. I think Raph and Michelangelo, like we've mentioned, I think in the show there's two, and I think it was the same way with the Toys That Made Us. They were saying that they were too similar
right.
in the show, in this show, and I think that's the reason why
Maybe a little
Raph was a
angry
little bit more angrier and Michelangelo was more of the
party dude.
party dude. I mean, he was rude. He's not really that rude in the animated show.
Right.
But I did like that. I mean, we have to give props to Uncle Phil.
Yeah, I think that is probably my favorite. Just the voice of Shredder and Krang having to say like in those like sort of, especially Shredder, like his like super serious voice, all sort of ridiculous, like
Well, and then like, and see,
cursing the turtles and
yes, and like, but like that's the thing. It's like when you and I'm a huge Fresh Prince of Bel Air fan, so know him as Uncle Phil, and I'm like, when you realize Uncle Phil is Shredder, I bet he probably got so many fans of both shows going.
right.
But yeah, I'll give it uh what would 1 to 10? What would I give it for both of them? Let's if it was a full episode,
Okay.
I'll give it an 8,
All right. I'd probably be like a 7.
7.
Yeah.
Oh, that's I think I give it 8 more just because I'm more of a
Yeah,
fan,
you were always the bigger turtle
turtle
fan than I
fan.
was.
So that was our look at the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles pilot episode. Jay, what's gonna be our next
I think
video
next we're gonna tackle looking at the Doomsday comic series. Like I
series?
think it's sort of the death of Superman
The Death of Superman and
and then that
Superman Doomsday, and then
the
this is going,
animated
and then what
film.
we'll do, uh, Doomsday, and then after we do Superman, we're finally gonna get the 3 hour film
Yeah, then we'll
John
get to
Wick,
John Wick.
Chapter 4. So, um, signing off, I'm Steve,
I'm Jay.
and Turtle Power.